are listening to the Tudor History and Travel Show, Travel Essentials, the place to be for all the best top tips and inspiration for planning your Tudor adventures. So, let's get ready to hit the road with Sarah Morris, the Tudor Travel Guide.
Hello everybody and welcome back to this third episode of the Tudor History and Travel Show Travel Essentials, where we aim to tackle all your most pressing travel related questions. So if you are planning your Tudor road trip here to the UK, and I know we're still kind of tied down a little bit with COVID, but things are a-shifting, folks, then this is the best place for you to be. So in a moment, I'm going to be welcoming our resident travel expert, Philippa Brewell from British History Tours, and together we are going to tackle the question of the month. Before I welcome a new guest to the show who is going to be sharing their top place to take rest and refreshment, and we're going to be in the county of Sussex for that one, so a different county I think than we've touched on before, so I'm looking forward to that. And then finally, I'm going to bring you a couple of Tudor-themed events that are going on both online and in the real world. And they are going to be spectacular. So do hang on for that. But in the meantime, let's just get cracking and let me welcome my time traveller my time travelling friend, Philippa. Hello, Philippa. Welcome.
Hello, hi, welcome. Hi everybody. Hi Sarah, thank you for having me on again.
Oh, it's lovely to see you. Now
You threw me there with time travel. I was thinking Doctor Who.
Yeah,
I'm not really Doctor Who.
No, but you would be great. So for those of you who don't know, this of course is a podcast, but we do record this podcast on video, and that goes, well, I stream that on my YouTube channel. Just search for the Tudor Travel Guide on YouTube, and if you do, you'll see Philippa looking incredibly glamorous, as she always does. I don't know how you do it at this time in the morning.
Classic tracksuit bottoms from the bottom down. On the bottom.
Yes, I know what you mean. I'm not sure I've been out of my yoga pants for about 2 weeks, but anyway, let's not talk about that. Yeah. That's probably going to put people off. So what question are we tackling today, Philippa?
So today we are talking about the UK beyond London, because I think we've both said before, it's really tempting to focus on London and maybe go a little bit outside London. But today we're going to go outside of London proper and give you some suggestions of Tudor places that you might want to visit. That aren't London based.
Yeah, because I think like most countries in the world, England isn't London. So if you experience London, well, that's a vibe and it's a great place to be. But there's so much more to see in England, and it's a different kind of pace outside of London. So I think good suggestion. So what are you going to be sharing with us today? How are we going to be approaching this? Because there's a lot of space outside London.
There is a lot of space. So I've had to be selective. So perhaps we could do another one. If everyone's interested, we could maybe do a second edition of this. But I've picked out some places today. And what I've done is focus on places that are easily accessible, travel-wise, opening hours-wise, because we could go into other ones, but they might be a little bit more, you have to arrange, or they might be a little bit out of people's way. So for today, these are your kind of easy go-tos, easily accessible places.
Lovely. So where are you going to take us first?
Okay. First of all, we're going to go to Stratford-upon-Avon. Now, Stratford, obviously birthplace of Shakespeare, but actually for the Tudor traveller as well, you've got a lot you can do in a very small space. It's all walkable. And if you go by train, the train station is walkable, walking distance from the town. So as well as some very top quality Tudor places to see, it's also extremely easy to get around. And as Sarah will probably tell you, there's plenty of cafes and places for tea and cake.
Yes, I might be able to give a little recommendation there. In fact, we're easily within travelling distance, and when we meet, we actually meet in Stratford, don't we? Or often we do. But maybe it's just worth just giving a little bit of geographic orientation as to where Stratford is, particularly in relation to London. How long does it take to get there, etc.
Sorry, yes, absolutely. So Stratford is in Warwickshire. So if you looked at a map, we're pretty much in the middle, bottom right of the middle, if you like, and it's about maybe 3/4 of an hour from London by train, depending on which one you get. But so it's easy to get to. Yeah, and like you say, and once you're there, there's lots to do, and you're in a different part of the world. You'll feel like you're in a different part of the world to London, which I think is important.
It is important. I just want to add something. I remember reading a contemporary account actually of Kenilworth Castle, which is not far away from Stratford, and the chronicler called this part of England the navel of England. So
there you go.
There you
go. The Belly Button of England.
There you go. A Tudor traveller actually giving us the geographic location to the pinpoint. Anyway, so tell us a little about what we can see at Stratford.
So you can go to Shakespeare's birthplace. This is the home that his father owned and that it's believed that Shakespeare was born in. And due to there being a Shakespeare's Birthplace Trust, the whole of the site and the house is preserved and accessible. So you can literally go into the room where they think Shakespeare was born, which is obviously very exciting.
Yeah.
But within walking distance, you can go to the Guildhall, which is that's independently run, but that is where it's effectively their town hall. But also above was the school that Shakespeare attended, still actually attached to a real life school now as well, which is quite exciting. And you can see things like the headmaster's desk, or the desk that was in the room next to the schoolroom, where all the boys have scratched in their names into, well, not all the boys, there's loads of like graffiti scratched into the table. So, and you can get up close and personal with that. So definitely recommend Guildhall. And you can go to Holy Trinity Church, which is where Shakespeare and quite a few members of his family are buried. And of course, while you're there, there's a river that runs through Stratford upon Avon. Literally, it's
the River Avon.
The River Avon. It's on the Avon. I was going to go into what Stratford meant then, but that's probably a bit too much. And known for its swans. So there's just goodness knows how many swans, hundreds and hundreds of swans. So definitely worth taking a walk down the river while you're there as well. It's beautiful, and you've obviously got theatres. I think they pack in at least 3 theatres along the riverside, or very close to it. So you could go to the Royal Shakespeare Theatre, the Swan, and there's one called the Other Place, which is just up the road, which I love the way they've named that. And near there is a pub called the Dirty Duck, which apparently is where it's a very old pub, but it's also where a lot of the actors from the theatres will hang out. So if you want something, it's slightly out of the main sort of hub of the town. So you're more likely to see someone there. Do
a bit of stargazing while you're in Stratford.
Yeah, which would be cool, wouldn't it? So there's loads to do in a very small area. So I would thoroughly recommend that to any Tudor fan.
Okay, that's brilliant. So that's Stratford. So where are you taking us next, Philippa?
Next, I'm taking you somewhere with a bit of a water theme, I suppose. We talked about the river at Stratford. The Mary Rose, Henry VIII's flagship. She is permanently stationed, docked, I don't know how you would term it, at Portsmouth Historic Dockyard. So I would, if you're into Tudors, I would definitely recommend you going to it. It is a little bit out on its own, although there's lots of other stuff you can do in Portsmouth, and the historic dockyard, has other ships as well. But the reason I would definitely say go and see the Mary Rose is not just that you see the ship, but they brought up 19,000 artifacts with her, and it's literally a time capsule into Tudor life, or at least the life of a Tudor sailor, and they're incredible. And because they were under the silt, they're quite well preserved. A lot of them are very well preserved. So I don't think anyone with a Tudor love would regret making that journey. And Portsmouth is down on the south coast, so where you see the Isle of Wight just off the coast of the south of England, Portsmouth is the land the equivalent. So that's where you'd get a ferry to and from the Isle of Wight as well, if you wanted to sort of make a weekend of it and do a bit of travelling around.
And do you think the best way to get to Portsmouth is via the train, or would you drive down there? What would you recommend?
If you're based in London, you can easily get the train. Again, the train, like Stratford, the train goes straight into the I don't know if it's city or town, but it goes straight to the harbour side, actually. So it's really, really easy to get to by train. So in fact, even though I drive most other places in England other than London, which we spoke about last month, I've still got the train down to Portsmouth because it is very easy.
Excellent, excellent. Now, I'm ashamed to say I've never been to the Mary Rose Museum.
Oh,
I was supposed to do a podcast recording there last year, but COVID scuppered all of that. But I have a lovely invite to go down, so I'm really looking forward to it because I only ever hear amazing things about it. So I'm waiting. You know what it's like, Philippa, when you've been to so many places? It's really nice to go somewhere that you haven't been, and you're kind of waiting to have your socks blown off by the experience.
Well, I think you definitely will with the Mary Rose. You're definitely going to enjoy that.
Okay, cool. So that's our second one. So where are we going next?
So next we're coming back up to the Midlands, but we're going to the other side of the Midlands. I don't know whether this would be to the left of the navel, if we're going with that analogy. We're going to the English Welsh border, and we're going to Ludlow. And Ludlow is a very old town. Ludlow Castle was built within a decade of the Norman Conquest. So there has been an establishment, if you like, there for that long. And for Tudor fans, this is where Arthur Tudor and his new bride, Catherine of Aragon, came and lived. Now, Arthur, as we know, died within a few months of their marriage, and he died at Ludlow Castle as well. And his heart is buried in St. Lawrence's Church in the town. So within an easy walking distance of the castle. And in fact, when you're at the top of the castle, you can look out and see the church. So I would definitely recommend that. They have fabulous festivals on at Ludlow. They're well known for their food and produce around the area. So if you are heading to Ludlow and you fancy trying to fit in with one of their festivals, have a look what's going on. They do food festivals. They do a medieval festival. I don't know if, well, they definitely do one in the winter.
Christmas one, yeah. I've been to the Christmas one a couple of years back, yeah.
I remember going when it was -6 degrees, and it was, my fingers hurt. But it was very nice. It was very atmospheric. And then I think if you're going to somewhere like Ludlow, you probably will have hired a car or got someone to take you perhaps. And I would recommend then taking a trip to Worcester Cathedral, which is probably about half an hour away, because that is where Arthur's body is buried, and his extravagant, beautiful tomb, which looks very much like the Henry VII Chapel of Westminster Abbey, because it was the same designer, architect who built it. So yes, I would recommend pairing, all of that together for a nice day out.
Yeah, that's a nice day out, absolutely. And Ludlow is a cute little town, isn't it? It's got, it's got a lovely little marketplace. It's got some quaint buildings, so you do get a bit of the oldie worldy feel when you visit Ludlow. And I love that little, well, there's all alleyway, snicket, wherever. There's all sorts of names depending on where you are in the country about how you call alleyways, snickleways, snickets. I don't know, but it leads through, doesn't it? Through to the church, so it really feels hidden away at the back. It's really sweet. Yes
it does. Yes, you go through, there's a little sign on the building at the side of the alleyway, I call it alleyway, to the church, because you could walk past and miss it.
Easily.
It's quite.
Yeah.
And when
Yeah.
you do go to the church, make sure that you go and have a look around all the misery chords, so the upended seats of the choir, because each one is unique. There's a modern one. There's one of our Queen on horseback there as well, but they go back, hundreds and hundreds of years. There's Plantagenet based ones. There's just everyday people based ones. People harvests and things like that. So yes, make sure you go and be nosy there. I would say.
Brilliant. Lovely. So Ludlow, great recommendation. And that brings us to our fourth, I think, place that you have on the list for us today.
So this is Peterborough Cathedral, which I would recommend people go and see. This is the burial place of Catherine of Aragon. It was at one point also the final resting, well, not the quite final resting place of Mary Queen of Scots. She was buried here. She was moved to Westminster Abbey by her son. And it's a fabulous cathedral. And each January, the end of January, they do a Catherine of Aragon festival where they celebrate Catherine of Aragon, and they do it on the weekend closest to her interment, which was the 29th of January. And they have events going on all weekend, so it's a fabulous time to try and go. Peterborough Cathedral as well. Obviously, it was an abbey before, so it was an abbey when Catherine of Aragon was buried there. And so if you walk around the grounds of the abbey, of the cathedral now as well, you can see remnants of the old abbey. It's a very, very atmospheric place, very pretty, and it's got a lot of history going on there. So yeah, I would definitely recommend there, and definitely recommend to try and get there at the end of January, if at all possible.
So I think if I'm right in saying Peterborough is on the north-south line, so the main train line that runs out of London going north towards Scotland. So it's a really easy train journey. I think probably only an hour or so, I would imagine. I haven't looked up the timetable, but I imagine that's kind of roughly what you're looking at.
Yes, I'd have thought so. It won't be any more than that. And yeah, quite direct from London.
Yeah, but if you are in the car, I would just put a pitch in for not too far away, of course, is the place of Mary Queen of Scots' execution, Fotheringhay. And although there's no castle left, you can see the kind of the Motte and Bailey, and it's a rather atmospheric place. And if you do go, make sure you check out the church there, because that was the mausoleum for the House of York, and it is stunning. So anyway, that's another thing. So I think we're moving on, aren't we, to our final destination. What are you going to recommend to us?
So I'm going to recommend another cluster of places in a small space, and we're going to Gloucestershire and to Sudeley Castle, which is another resting place of one of Henry VIII's wives, Catherine Parr. But also, it would have been well known to Henry and Anne. They visited there on in the happy times, the summer progress of 1535. And nearby is Hales Abbey, which is a beautiful ruin, but with a tumultuous, is that the right word, past. So even while Henry and Anne were having fun at Sudeley Castle, Henry's men were at Hales Abbey having a little bit of a closer look as to what they were up to there, and not being very happy with what they found. But I'm sure you've covered that before. Yes, for your fabulous podcasts.
The infamous duck blood saga.
The duck blood. Absolutely, the duck blood saga. So and then also not very far away is Gloucester Cathedral, which is a firm favourite of both of ours, isn't it?
Yes,
and
totally.
If you've watched Harry Potter or quite a few just historical dramas, they've used the cloisters of Gloucester Cathedral over and over again, because they just look stunning. You obviously, a cloister is a square, and I still find myself, I turn a corner, I need to take a picture of this cloister, and then I turn the next corner, I need to take a picture of this one. I've just got hundreds of photos of the cloisters, but quite a lot still remaining that the monks would recognise. So, where they would wash their hands, the channel where the water would run is still there. And again, it would have been familiar to Henry and Anne. They visited there on their 1535 progress. And also significant in the story of Mary the First, this is one of the places where she sought to stamp her foot down on the Protestant faith, and the abbot, the second Bishop of Gloucester, there, the abbot was burnt there in 1555. So, and you can actually still see the gate, the precinct called St Mary's Gate, and the monks, or the Winterbeam monks, the chapter of that abbey, were made to watch as their abbot was burnt on the green, which is rather mean. But yeah, but you can still see that gate. You can still see the windows that they would have looked out of. So, but it's a really beautiful cathedral.
It really is. It's very historic. In fact, also, I think it was one of the Henrys, Henry the Sixth. Third. I always get my third and my sixth for some reason. I'm fixated on Henry VI being crowned at Gloucester, but you're absolutely right. It was Henry, the young boy. He was in his minority at the time. Was crowned at Gloucester.
Supposedly crowned with his mother's crown. It was a term. It's either crown or bracelet, something like that. But yes, the young boy was crowned there.
And I think there's an abbot there who was the abbot that greeted Henry and Anne. So his tomb can still be seen. I can't remember the name of the abbot, but the guy who basically greeted Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn when they arrived at Gloucester, you can still see his tomb. And as you say, the cloisters are my favourite. They are, in my opinion, just the most superb in the country, better than Westminster Abbey, and you also don't have the numbers of people there, so you can get your fantastic shots of the cloister.
Absolutely. In fact, I would say, for possibly other than Stratford, because it's obviously very well known, I would say that the places we've picked out today, you will also be away from the crowds that you would expect at some of the, the more central locations. So, if you're someone who likes to go and imbibe the energy there, the vibe, then these places I think you'll really enjoy.
The only thing I would say that's a little bit or disappoints me about Gloucester is, unfortunately, the actual feel of the medieval town, other than the cathedral precinct, has pretty much gone, hasn't it? Because it's been the buildings of the town have been lost, and although you get that wide central high street that would have same imprint as it would have had during the 16th century, unfortunately you get a lot of kind of modernity, the usual kind of retail shops in the high street. So the other thing I would point people towards, if they do happen to be in Gloucester, is to make sure you also go to the other monastic institutions. So I think it's Blackfriars that still survives in a reasonable state, and you can see the scriptorium where the monks would write, and that's really quite a rare thing to see, and you'll have the place completely to yourself. So it's fantastic. And I think just outside of Gloucester there's Lantony Priory Secunda, I think, which is a sort of satellite house of the main priory they set up there. And I haven't been to Lantony Priory Secunda, but it's one of the places that I'd like to get to. So Gloucester was well served with abbeys and monastic institutions of the time, and they're there in various states of repair. But I would also say, Philippa, that we are going to be there together, aren't we, towards the end of this year in September, as part of the On Progress with Anne Boleyn tour that we're running together. Do you want to say a couple of words about that? And I can pitch in as well.
We are. So we're going on the 2nd of September till the 6th, and we're following in the footsteps of Henry and Anne at this happy time in Anne's life, this summer progress of 1535, and we're following them on the Gloucestershire leg of their progress. So we will be visiting Sudeley, and we'll be visiting Gloucester and a number of other places as well.
Yeah, some lovely other places, including Thornbury and Acton Court. It's going to be amazing. I love Gloucestershire. I live on the edge of Gloucestershire, and to me, it's one of the prettiest counties in the country. Away from the main historic locations, the villages and the honey-coloured Cotswold stone, and kind of lots of lush green valleys and fields. I absolutely love Cotswold.
It's an underrated county, actually, isn't it? You don't hear much about Gloucestershire, but I totally agree. It's beautiful. It's got a lot to offer.
So folks, if you wanted to join us on our adventure in time in September, following in the footsteps of Anne Boleyn and Henry VIII, then you need to just pop over to the British History Tours site, and there is an events page, isn't there, where people can catch up, find out more information and sign up. Is that right, Philippa?
Yeah, so if you head to britishhistorytours.com, on the homepage, I've put the tours all on there, or you can click through to the History Tours page and and other details. So you can see the full itinerary, you can see who our speakers are, you can see where we're going to be, where we're going to stay. It's all on there, so you can get all the information you require.
Oh, and it's looking so positive for things going ahead in the autumn. So I'm so excited. It's going to be brilliant.
It feels like we've been in the traps, ready to go for so long.
We're ready to go. We're ready to go. You can't hold us back. So I hope that some of you might be able to join us there. Okay, so I think that's it for our chat today. I'm going to put you on the spot again, though, Philippa, and ask, what are we doing next time?
Next time, we are going to talk about what to pack. We're going to give you some top tips as to what to pack and what the weather might be like depending on when you're coming, because actually we're all a little bit out of practice with packing. Even the ones of us who'd got it down to a fine art, I think probably require a few reminders as to some of those top tips. So that's what we'll be doing next month.
Okay, well, I'll get my thinking cap on again, and we can compare notes when we meet next month. But with that, thank you very much for taking us out of London, showing us some different places that we can think about visiting. Thank you, Philippa, and I'll see you next month.
You're very welcome. See you next time.
Well, my friends, I hope that's given you some inspiration for getting out of the capital and exploring some of the nooks and crannies of England, and indeed beyond, because, as Philippa said, there are so many places to see and explore outside of London that we are bound to return to this topic and go further afield, indeed across borders into Wales and Scotland, as well as discovering other nooks and crannies of England. Okay, with that, we're ready to go on to the second part of the show. And as you recall, this is where I invite another guest along to share with me their top tip for an accommodation recommendation, or, as is the case today, simply just a place to stop and take refreshment. And so with that, let's go straight over and join in the conversation with my next guest of the day. So hello, Kat. Welcome to Travel Essentials.
Hello, Sarah. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's great to have you here. And there may be some people out there who have not come across your amazing YouTube channel, and it is absolutely fabulous. So before we dive into your recommended place to visit to enjoy rest and refreshment, perhaps you just want to tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and where people can find you.
Oh, thank you so much. So I run a YouTube channel called Reading the Past, and I go as Dr. Cat from Reading the Past. And on that channel, I talk about history. And if you enjoy history chat, then maybe come and find me and check me out.
Definitely do that. And you do love your Tudor history, and you do a lot of videos on Tudor history, but you do more than that as well, don't you?
Well, I'm a Shakespeare scholar by trade, so I live in the Tudor world as an academic, but I also pick and choose from other periods of history that take my fancy. So one week I might talk about the suffragettes, I might talk about the Georgians, I might talk about medieval history, as the mood takes me.
Marvellous. And maybe people even might recognise you from your reenactment that you've done in the past, because you've been to some of the iconic places, haven't you? So it'd be just fun if you told us a little bit about that, maybe.
Yeah, so I have worked as a costumed historic interpreter at various historic heritage sites, predominantly with historic royal palaces. So I've worked at the Tower of London, I've worked at Hampton Court, and I most recently was working at Kensington before everything kicked off. So I was one of the people in the costumes playing various figures from history, some queens, some ladies, and a few criminals.
Which did you enjoy the most? That is the question.
Do you know, the role I enjoyed playing the most was when I got to play an artificial fool at Hampton Court Palace. So fooling is just the most delightful experimental, fun thing to do.
It must have been amazing to be a fool, because you could get away with so much, couldn't you, that nobody else could get away with. Am I right in saying that?
I mean, that certainly seems to be the case for the natural fools, which, of course, as I wasn't playing a natural fool, I was playing an artificial. But there's definitely a sense that people in medieval and Tudor times thought of the natural fool as almost a conduit, that because of their limitations, that they somehow were divinely inspired, and therefore they got an amazing amount of license. It's not so much that I think there's a perception that they're there to be mocked, and I don't see it as that. I think they were valued members of households and seen as being frequently very close to telling the truth and valuable for that.
Oh gosh, I can see a whole podcast episode coming up just on that. We might have to talk again just on that subject, but I really must rein us in and focus on the task in hand. And of course, here at the Travel Essentials, it's all about getting out and about and seeing and touching your Tudor history. And this particular section of the show is when lovely folk like you come on and share a recommendation for us. So where are you going to share with us today, Kat?
So I would like to share the George Inn at Alfriston, which is first licensed in the late 14th century. So it predates the Tudor period. However, of course, it's still up and running during that time. And it's really lovely. It's a beautiful pub with a lovely restaurant, and they also have rooms where you can stay.
Yeah, now, for those people who don't know where Alfriston is, maybe you could just give us a little bit of an orientation. Where is it? How far away from London? That kind of thing.
So it's in East Sussex. So depending on the traffic, you're probably looking about maybe 1 to 2 hours drive from the bottom of London, from South London. And this Alfriston is right in the location of the South Downs. So beautiful walking routes to follow as well.
And it's not far from the coast, is it? It's not far, because I had a little sneaky peek on the map just to remind myself where I was. It's not too far from the south coast there.
No, you're in the kind of vicinity of places like Brighton and also Lewes, so lots of historic, more well-known historic places.
Yeah, great. So again, I snuck a little look on Google at the George at Alfriston. And can you describe what it looks like? So, I mean, what I will do, by the way, is I've got a show notes page. So I will put a link to the George at Alfriston in the show notes page. And there'll be a couple of images there. So if anybody wants to pop on over, just look at the link in the description that will be associated with this podcast and you can check it out. But for those of you who are just listening, your powers of description, Kat, let's put them to the test.
So from the outside, it is pure ye olde English pubby. It's that kind of white and black facade that's so typically Tudor or even mock Tudor. This is of course a much older building, and inside you've got those low ceilings, and it just feels incredibly cozy and comfortable, and it's a proper old English pub that you see in film and TV.
Oh, lovely. So you ate there. I think you said to me that you dined there. You hadn't stayed there, but you dined there. So what about the food? What was your favourite thing? Can you remember what you ate?
Oh, yes. And I've been there a couple of times, and I've always had the same thing, which they do these sharing platters, like charcuterie boards, all different bits and pieces. And I've always had one of those, and they are delightful.
Lovely, lovely. So Alfriston is quite a small village. Would that be right?
Yeah, it's a really tiny village, and there's Alfriston Clergy House is the nearest, I think, big draw historical site. But predominantly, you're going to see a lot of people who are walking because they've come off the South Downs, and this is a pub en route. There's a post office with a corner shop, and there's this pub and another couple of pubs, but it's by no means a big place.
No, that's lovely. So do you know, you may not know, is it dog friendly? I'm thinking walkers. I'm thinking maybe, but maybe not.
I don't know specifically. They do have a large beer garden. So I tend to think that places where you're on a walking route and there's a beer garden, it's going to be a place where they'd welcome dogs, but I don't know for 100% sure.
Oh, that's lovely. So that sounds like a really, as you say, great place to get a little taste of quintessential ye oldie worldy England, basically.
Yeah.
You mentioned this. I've heard of the Alfriston Clergy House. What is it exactly?
Well, to be honest, I haven't been to the clergy house because the connected site that I wanted to talk about is one of the ones on the South Downs Walk. But the clergy house is a National Trust property and therefore looked after by them, and there'll be loads of information about what that is on the National Trust site. But there's a list of walks that you can go on, and it's under the website the Long Man Walks. And one of them is local churches that are local to this pub. So say you stay over and you fancy going on the South Downs. Where it connects for me as a Tudor place is that you can see in some of these churches evidence of the Reformation, or really what was there before the Reformation. In particular, there's one called Coombes Church, and that's Coombes, Coombes Church, and they have wall paintings that have been uncovered underneath the whitewash that date from the 12th century.
Wow. And are they quite intact? Is there quite a lot to see?
Yes, they are. They look very intact.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, so any other historic gems in the area or things that people might want to combine their visit with?
Absolutely. I mean, I think if you've got your car and you can drive to Lewes, then of course you've got various sites in Lewes, including of course Anne of Cleves House. And I'm going to put a special plea in for a day trip into Brighton and go out of the Tudor period, go Georgian, check out the pavilion.
Okay, right, yes. We've had a bit of a chat about that. It's one of your favourite buildings, isn't it?
It is.
A completely different experience. And there of course there are people who are travelling who want to see more of England than just the Tudors. So there's a top tip for you. So I think that probably is all we need to say about the George Alfriston. Thank you so much for sharing that. I will try and dig out as many links as you've mentioned as possible and put them in the show notes. But just before you go, once again, where can people find you, Kat?
If you come over to YouTube and you search for Reading the Past, you can find me there.
Okay, lovely. Well, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your recommendation with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Well, that's a big thank you to Kat for helping us out with this month's recommendation of a place to take rest and refreshment. And so as ever, we're going to move along to the final part of the show where I share with you a couple of up-and-coming Tudor-themed events that you might enjoy and which you might want to put into your calendar. And as ever, I've tried to select one which is online, which you can access wherever you are in the world. And this month it is a corker. I'm already signed up, by the way. And another one, which if you are here in the UK over the next couple of months, you might want to try and enjoy in person. And again, this is one of my favourite places to go. So for the first event, which is an online event, I want to turn to historic royal palaces again, because I came across the fact that they are running an event online on Wednesday, the 24th of March at 7 p.m. And this is called Tudor Magnificence. And it's going to be brilliant because we are going to be transported to a world of opulence and 16th century bling as joint chief curator Lucy Worsley, along with Glenn Richardson, who, as you well know, is a good friend of the Tudor Travel Guide from St Mary's University, and fellow Historic Royal Palaces curators Dr. Alden Gregory and Brett Dolman, who are going to together online bring together the magnificence of the Tudor court. Now, I also have interviewed Alden Gregory for one of my podcasts last year. It was all to do with the Field of Cloth of Gold and Tudor tents. That's Tents, tents. And that was just so revealing. It was one of my favourite recordings to do of last year. So the fact that at least three of these people I certainly know well and I think are fantastic at what they do. This is going to be a brilliant event. So basically you can book your place online. It is free, But if you wish to make a donation, you can do so. And I, as ever, will put a link in the show notes associated with this podcast. And you'll find a link to those notes in the description as ever. And you can pop along and book your place. So that's Wednesday, the 24th of March at 7 p.m. And that's GMT, Greenwich Mean Time. Okay, so now if you are in the UK, and you will have noticed if you are, that spring is definitely springing here. We had a glorious weekend last weekend, and I think everybody's moods was up. And just to get you in the mood even more, I want to draw your attention to events that are going on at Easter at Kentwell. Now, many of you will know that Kentwell has a long history of deeply authentic Tudor reenactment. It's one of the most authentic and the largest reenactment events in the world. I haven't been to their Easter event, but I certainly went to their High Summit event. Oh my goodness, what a fantastic day out that was. So at Easter, Kentwell will be running a traditional Easter family day out. And as they say, it's one of the most popular weekends of the year, with lots to do and see, lots of family-friendly activities, and acres of garden and woodland to enjoy it in. So because of social distancing, the house itself is closed, but throughout the grounds, Tudor life will be brought to life by Kentwell's living historians, and there'll be a little Easter challenge in there around finding some eggs that have been hidden in various nooks and crannies around the ground. So just to reassure you, as I say, these events will be being held in the gardens and will be abiding to COVID restrictions and precautions. And because of that, if you do think about going, and Kentwell is in Suffolk, then you will have to book your tickets in advance. That is essential because they are limiting the numbers of people on site. And once again, a link to the Kentwell Easter event will be in the show notes associated with this blog. Okay, well, those are two amazing events. I may not be able to get to Kentwell at Easter, but I'm certainly going to be tuning into the historic royal palaces. And if you can make Kentwell, then I heartily recommend it, my friends. So with that, I think we are done for today's show. And you will be hearing from me again on my main episode of the Tudor History and Travel Show. And I'm so excited to say that I am going to be unleashed and out and about, and will be going down to London to record next month. That's April's main on-location show. So stay tuned to find out exactly where I will be going. And of course, I will return again around this time next month in April to tackle another one of your travel-related questions, bring you more places to stay and events to tune into. So until then, my friends, that is all from me. And as ever, all that remains for me to say is, of course, happy time travelling. Thanks for tuning in, folks. Now remember, if you've enjoyed the show, please do like, rate and subscribe to this podcast to spread the Tudor love. Until next time.